Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Insights from Women Leaders event. My name is Rola, and I'm the CEO of Salus Vitae Group, and I'll be the host for the event. For those joining us again, of course, welcome back. This is our seventh event of this series that we launched in October. Now, for those that are new to the series, welcome. We're very happy to have you with us and join us in this conversation. Now, a little background on the Insights from Women Leaders series that we launched, like I mentioned, in October. We launched it to highlight the journeys and contributions of various women leaders. These industry leaders will share their insights on a range of topics, and including their thoughts on leadership and what their role is in shaping the future. Like I mentioned, we've already had 7 guests, and we will have another 2 others next week, and that will be the end for 2020 for this series. But all of the guest leaders have provided valuable perspectives. So I really encourage everyone to listen to the recordings of the previous leaders if you haven't already done so. All the recordings are available on our website. Now, today, over the course of an hour, we ask our guest leaders a number of questions. I start first, and then we actually open it up to audience questions. So please, if you have any question at any point, you can submit it in the Q&A box that's at the bottom of your screen, and then we'll get to them towards the end of the conversation. We also encourage you both during and after the event to post any takeaways that you might have in the Q&A box or on various social media platforms, and tag us at Salus Vitae Group. We always love hearing how you benefited from the various insights and experiences of our distinguished leaders. Now, this session will be recorded and available for replay after the event. Now let's get started. Our guest leader today is not a healthcare provider, but she embodies a talented, humble, smart, and successful woman leader who we can all learn from. I'm very pleased to introduce and welcome our guest leader and a friend of mine, Sherlaender Lani Phillips. Lani brings over 20 years, Lani brings over 20 years in experience in the technology industry as a technology executive. Lani currently serves as the Vice President of Channel Sales at Microsoft Corporation. Her team supports our customers' digital transformation efforts by accelerating co-selling partnerships with the Microsoft partner ecosystem, representing a $40 billion business. Previously, Lani has held numerous senior leadership roles across Microsoft, including Chief Transformation Officer for Microsoft's Enterprise Partner Group, where she led the largest global sales transformation in Microsoft's history. Prior to that, Lani led the Enterprise Partner Group in the Midwest region, delivering on both revenue and scorecard goals across our top enterprise customers. Lani was recognized as one of the top 10 most influential women in cloud in Insight's Success magazine. She also was awarded the 2020 Executive Impact Award from Linkage and the CRN 2020 Women in Channel Leading Fearlessly in a Time of Crisis, featuring the top women in the channel. Her efforts have also focused on creating more opportunities for women in the tech industry. She also serves on the International Association of Microsoft Channel Partners, Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Board. And today, I don't know if I can make this announcement about your award, but today she's actually also receiving the Inclusive Leader Award for Technology from Global Minded. Now, last year, this is where I met Lani. I was actually invited on a women leadership panel with Lani and other exceptional women at Microsoft. Now, Lani had provided such a refreshing perspective on leadership, on how to build teams, how we stay true to ourselves, and really how to create a career that we are proud of. So I definitely left that event. It was a very memorable one for me, but Lani definitely had a huge positive impact on me. And so I believe that we will talk about all of these topics in some way, form, or another during this conversation, but you're definitely in for a real treat. So welcome, and thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you so much, Rola. I mean, wow, how do I follow that? But all I can say is just thank you. I just wanted to take a few minutes and tell you that that opportunity we had to sit on the panel you talked about the impact I had on you. I walked away with just as much wisdom from you. And I am just so excited about the friendship that you and I have developed. And I look forward to us doing more together.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so we have several questions. There's so much I want everyone to hear from you, and I want to hear as well. So we have a lot in store today. So let's jump into the first question that we have asked all of our guest leaders, because what's happened is, as you can see, we introduce their bios, we talk about everything that they've done or that their current positions. But reflecting on that, as even as you listen to it, did you expect to be where you are today?
The honest answer is I really wanted it in my heart. I was very intentional about planning for it. But there were so many times that I didn't think I would get there. And so when I finally got there, I was like, wow, I'm here. Now, what am I going to do with this platform? And now I'm able to stand in this confidence and really use my voice for good. And I know I should be doing more. And so I'm really looking forward to dreaming an even bigger dream and contributing on a bigger level. And that's an honest answer to that.
I love it. There's just so much realness to that, where you're just like, I really wanted it. And being intentional, I think, is a theme that many leaders have talked about. But I think merging those two, right? That very human element also of just being very intentional because of that. So that actually is great, as that means you've been thinking a lot previously and probably now about your future or what you want your legacy to be, because as you mentioned, you want to do more. But what does your future look like? What do you want your legacy to be?
Wow, so what do I want my future to be like is I want to practice more courage. I want to be more fearless. I want to take more risks. And I really want to focus in on making a difference in the lives of people, because that's what I want my legacy to be. I really want to make a difference with the time that I have left here. We can lose sight of things, focusing on the business, focusing on all of our goals. I just really want to make sure I don't lose sight that the time we all have here, we need to make a difference and make a difference in the lives of others. That's really important to me at this time.
This is wonderful. So reflecting on that, it's a big goal, right? To impact as many people possible, make sure that the time that we have is everything that we hoped it would be, and more into the lives. But how have your past and present experiences really shaped this outlook for you?
Yeah, so many people who know me know that I lost my mother at a very early age. I lost my mother at the age of 12. My mother was a school teacher, well respected, highly educated, and of course she was married, my dad, all the same things. But my mother passed from cancer. And so my sister and I went to both of her funerals, and I tell everybody, I remembered the funeral. I remembered sitting there mourning the loss of my mother, but I had a block on all the events that happened at the funeral. And the brain just has a way of helping us manage trauma, I guess. And in that particular situation, I had a block. It actually was fairly recent, Rola, that I had a dream as I was reflecting over why are all these things so important to me. And I had a dream and remembered my mom's funeral. My mother had 2 funerals. And in both funerals, in the Southern funerals, I don't know if you've experienced this, where they allow people to speak about the deceased. Well, my mother had lines along the wall out the door where people were getting up to speak about my mother. Now, my 12-year-old mind was, oh my goodness, I can't believe all those people want to talk. I need to just get out of here. But here I am, fast forward as an adult, I'm dreaming about that. And I remember what they said about my mom. And I remember things like they were saying what a difference she made in their lives, how she challenged them, encouraged them to really focus on their education. They all had a personal story of where she made a difference in their lives. And it's really that, where I really just came crashing down with the fact that I probably have more years behind me than I do in front of me. And it's going to be so important that I do something positive with the time I have left, because when I close my eyes for good, if they allow people to speak, I want them to say those things about me. And that helps shape me and shape my vision for the legacy I want to leave behind.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
It's definitely it took from a difficult situation in the sense of how are people remembering her? I mean, you have multiple memories, obviously, of your mother and how you perceive her, but seeing that true legacy that, you know, whatever she taught those others or those individuals in that line will also, they will teach their children, or maybe if it's even pure kindness, right? That has that ripple effect. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Now, thinking about the future, what excites you about the future? What do you look forward to and gets you going?
Well, you know what I'm excited about? I'm excited about this next generation entering into the workplace. So we already have a number of millennials and Gen Zers starting to enter into the workplace. And I just think they're refreshing. They're refreshing because they're challenging old school norms and they're demanding something different. They're demanding more flexibility. They're demanding more technology. You got to keep in mind, this is the generation that grew up with it, right? They're also, they have values that govern their lives, and they are evaluating where they want to spend their time with the people, the companies that they want to make sure they're working at, to make sure that whatever the company is about, their mission and vision, that it's in alignment with the things that are important to them. And I think they are also focused on making sure you respect them as individuals first. And that is very fluid these days as well. So I'm really excited about the uniqueness that they're going to bring into the workplace and really helped us shift more into a modern style leadership versus that old school leadership that has governed us for many years.
I like that. And so what do we as leaders need to build? It could be a mindset, it could be skills, it could be tools. What do we need to start thinking about as we go into the future and as we start thinking about building the futures, whether it's our own individual future or kind of a collective, in order to be successful? What do you begin to start thinking about, like, as you're telling people what they need moving into the future?
Wow, moving into the future, you're going to need literacy on a few fronts. You're going to need technical literacy. You're going to need to be able to understand the technology, be able to use it comfortably, because we never know. We might be in this post-pandemic world. We're going to be using technology even more because people are going to have these hybrid work environments. So it's going to be so important that you're comfortable with technology. I also think it's going to be important as you think about preparing for the future that you have some emotional literacy. It's going to be important that you are able to be in touch with your own emotions. And for those of you that are in leadership especially, it's going to be important that you're able to acknowledge emotion in others. Because if you're not able to deal with those fears and those feelings that your employees have, it will show up in non-productive actions. So I think it's going to be important for us, in order for us to practice more empathy and practice more compassion, we're going to have emotional literacy. I think we're also going to have cultural literacy. I think we have a generation today that is global in nature. They've been traveling most of their lives. We're going to have more immigrants coming in. We're going to have people that are going to be living all over the world, and you're going to be doing business more than likely with people all over the world. You need to have a level of understanding around sensitivities and respect around how to do business with different cultures around the world. So if I had to limit it to 3 for the sake of time, it would be those 3 right there.
Those are very valuable. And I think those are across whatever discipline that you are in, whatever you are practicing. I think those are truly universal items. So let's come back to the present, kind of your current train of thought or what you think about. And we're going to just talk about how you perceive success, how you're currently creating your environments for success. So the first question, in order to get into that, is how do you define success?
So Rola, I used to define success based on how much money I made, what goals I accomplished. You know, did I do specific things on my list? Not anymore. I really define success today in a couple areas. One, I want to make sure that I'm making a difference in the lives of people around me. And to tell you how serious I am about that, every day I ask myself as I'm writing in my journal, who have I impacted today in a positive way, to hold myself accountable. Another area in which I measure success is I am a wife and mom. And so I do check in with them, and I do want to make sure that they are happy and they are getting what they need from me and that they feel loved by me. So that is an area that I evaluate success from as well. But the third one, believe it or not, is really around self. And it's really around, am I finding joy in what I'm doing? And am I living into my values? And I want to make sure that no matter what I'm doing, I never lose sight of who I am. I spent too many years trying to fit in, and now I'm just more about showing up with the best version of myself. So that's how I measure success across all of those things.
I like how when you initially talked about how you used to measure it, you were not that excited. You're like, money's, and then you kind of lit up when you started talking about the new way you approach. And I think that's also a good measure, right? Like what lights you up when you're talking about it? Is it because that you are making a specific impact on someone or in an organization versus, you know, a salary or that type of thing? So definitely notice that in the conversation.
Good.
So how do you create your environment for success? We know that you also have to kind of go beyond yourself. You're also influenced by your environment. So how do you create those?
So at work, I still have goals and objectives on me and my organization. So I'll address it in that space, and then I'll address it personally. At work, I think it's important you surround yourself with smart people. But I have become an extremely big fan of surrounding myself with smart people, but everybody brings something unique to the table. There was a time where you selected talent that was similar to you, had drive like you, and then you look up and you have a bunch of carbon copies. I've learned that that doesn't benefit the team. What I like is the fact that everyone has diverse skills and experiences, and that is a secret sauce there. The second thing is to driving success at work is making sure you create an environment where all voices are heard and you hear perspectives from everybody. A lot of leaders feel like they have to bring the solutions to every problem, but sometimes it's our job to bring the problem to the group and let's talk about what's the right solution together and creating that space to really listen to them. And then I've also found that you've got to make sure you set milestones and celebrate milestone accomplishments along the way. And make sure you celebrate your people and give them a platform to shine as well. So when I think about success at work, that's how I think about it. Personally, the way I think about success is I've made sure that I have this tribe. I refer to it as my tribe. It's the people that I keep in my inner circle that give me energy, and they hold me accountable to living into my values and being all the things that I say I want to be. And when my confidence is down, and we all have days where our confidence is down, they're always lifting me up. We need that circle around us. So for me, that is what gets me through it. I have faith. I am a woman of faith. I do find that having a faith-based community to lean on is important to me as well. But more importantly, I'm also learning to make sure that I'm clear about what I want. So I'm trying to write more, ask myself the tough questions, try to find those answers to those questions, and really start to just lean into who I am, owning my truth, and being open with it, because I've learned through me being more vulnerable with others, I help more people that way.
When you mentioned your tribe, I remembered when we talked about it and you had told me that you were writing a book on leadership, and you smiled and you're like, I already told my tribe about it. And I remember, and you're just like, and so I have to do it. I have to do it. And I think that's so great because you can tell that there's a support system that you either have or create. And I think most people forget that oftentimes support systems and environments are created. Like people have positioned who they want around them, who they want to be influenced. You know, it's not all the time in every environment you can choose who you want around you, but there are certain environments that you can. So I definitely remember that from
You
our
do?
conversation.
And I tell people all the time, there are people that you might have in your tribe in one season of your life, but they're not in your tribe the next season of your life. Make sure that whoever you keep in that inner circle is giving you energy and lifting you up when you need that strength. I think that is so important.
Yeah, I really like that. So so the next question is about if you have various different initiatives and ideas and everything gets you excited, how do you prioritize? For you personally, how do you prioritize what you work on, what you give energy to? Is there like a formula do you use, or is it just depending on what's going on? What do you think about that?
Wow. So on my job, on an annual basis, it's pretty clear what my goals are and my objectives. So I think I've said that already. So that kind of governs where you focus your time. But as a leader, I think the biggest thing that I've learned is we've got to find a balance between strategic thinking and just tactical execution. And so for me, I do try to make sure that I have those short-term things that I need to go execute against that's going to help the organization hit its goals. And I make sure I work with my leadership team and everyone underneath to make sure we're aligned to do that and provide that clarity and support towards those goals. But I also think there are some problems and issues that we need to tackle that may be further out. And you do need to make sure that you carve out that time, that strategic thinking time, to say, what are we going to do about this? Let's not be a victim of whatever they push down to us. Let's make sure that we're being proactive in terms of how we're thinking about things. And let's make sure that we can propose what we're going to do to make it better for everyone. So I do think you need that balance, or just thinking about what new lines of businesses you want to create. Maybe you have some strategic deals you want to get after. So you think about strategic any way you want, but I do think it's important to have the balance. In my personal life, as I think about the priorities, so I have a young son, he's 11. Some of the expectations around education and things he wants governs where I spend my time as well, because I give a lot to work. And I also want to be the best mom I can be. But also, as I think about what I say yes to, whether it be interviews or whether it be participate in different things, I do try to make sure on an annual basis I kind of set those goals for myself that are leading up to the legacy that I want to leave behind. And I make sure that it fits within those things. And I have learned that it means that I have to have the courage to say no to some things. And it means you're going to miss out, but you have to have that discipline as you're working on goals in your life as well. So I try to do a mix. I try not to be too rigid, but as I'm starting to realize that some of the things that I'm trying to embark on are difficult, you do have to say no to some fun things just so you can buckle down and get things done.
Yeah, I like that. So are there any current initiatives that you're working on that you're really excited about that you'd like to share with us?
You know, I can give you one at work and I can give you one personally. So at work, the one thing I'm pretty excited about is I do something called a people agenda with my team. And I think about all those things that we're going to focus on around how we're going to communicate with our teams, how we're going to develop our teams, how are we going to talk about performance. How are we going to do kind of morale and celebrate our people. So we have a full plan around that. And one of the areas this year that was important to me is that I develop my leaders, and we're going to also develop everyone in the org, and we're going to be more intentional about it. And so that means that I wanted to look into all the training I've gone through, and I want to share the best of the best with them. And I also think you teaching the materials that you've learned over the years is always a great test for you. And it also keeps it fresh for you. So we're doing that right now. We're doing something really fun. We're doing Dare to Lead. Most people are familiar with Brene Brown. She has an incredible curriculum around Dare to Lead and has a workbook. So I'm taking my team through that. And I must tell you, to lead and facilitate those conversations, our relationships as a team are getting deeper because we're getting to know each other at a deeper level. And I think it's allowing us to really be able to support one another better. And so I'm really excited. And we're doing learning circles for everyone within the organization. And my leadership team is bringing their gifting and experience to share with them. And one of the ways that I'm helping with the broader team effort is I said I've learned a lot around career development. So I want to teach them how to manage their careers and share some of the strategies that I've used in the past and I've heard others use. So that's something I'm really excited about at work. I've got a great team in place that's helping me make that a reality, and I think everyone's having fun. So on a personal level, one of my big goals is I really decided that in order to help more people, I was going to have to use my voice more. And so one of the things I love to do is talk to people like you. So I am going to do a podcast. And so I am launching this podcast in January, and I'm not going to give you a date. It's going to be in January. Okay, that's the date for myself.
We've not become your tribe for this. We're like,
you're going to be my tribe for this.
Get on that podcast.
Yeah. Get on that podcast. I need those accountability partners. But yes, I decided to do it because one of the things that I have a tremendous amount of passion around is the heart of the leader. And I do see there is a lot of transitioning happening in the workplace around those that kind of grew up in more of an old school environment and this kind of modernized leadership approach that's happening. And as you have a multi-generational workforce, how do you get the most out of everyone to accomplish your business goals? So I really wanted to create a podcast where I talk to other leaders, and I don't want them to all be famous. I want them to be everyday leaders because there's something to learn from everyone. And I really want to capture their wisdom and just really just tackle just some different issues around a leadership journey and make sure we're able to share those tips with others and resources and just have a lot of fun. And I am looking forward to expressing that part of myself as well.
That's so wonderful. It's definitely a great opportunity to continue to amplify your voice on this topic. And I love the generous approach of saying that you want to bring in people so that, and rightfully so, I think this is one of the missions of this series as well, is to learn from each other and provide those insights and be that support during these times as well. So I want to make sure that we get into the bulk of the conversation, which is going to be on leadership and mentorship. So I want to spend a lot of time there. So in previous guest leaders, we actually asked a lot of our, or all of our health care leaders for the most part, if they believed that leadership in healthcare was different than other sectors. So it only made sense as we continue to ask them about leadership outside of healthcare to get the perspective of women leaders outside of healthcare and how that can apply, and what are the fundamental things that you think about that can also work for us and that we could learn from. So that's why I think it's so great now. Let's just focus on that topic, on leadership and mentorship. So, and I know this is a topic that's extremely of interest for you. So let's get to the first question. Now, we asked all of the guest leaders also a simple question on leadership. We asked them, how would you describe a leader? Now, you responded with the following. The formal definition of a leader is a person who leads or commands a group of people. Now, I know that you have a belief about leadership. So can you share that with us? Can you elaborate on your outlook here?
Yes, I'll be happy to. And it was important that you anchor on the formal definition because that's the way a lot of people define leadership. I actually heard John Maxwell define leadership as influence. And the more I live and the more I practice it and the more I see it, it really is about influence. And I also want to say that you can lead right from where you are, and you don't have to have direct reports. You could be responsible for an initiative, and you have to leverage many people to accomplish your goal. That's leadership. And I have just learned that it is so important to have everyone look inwardly and understand their accountability for influence and how are you going to influence others to accomplish your goal. I would also tell you in leadership, I have just learned that you're in a people business. And to get the most out of people, You really have to be intentional around making sure you don't lose sight of understanding the people that you are either trying to win over, to influence, or that you're responsible for leading. How do I get to know them a little bit better so I know their strengths? I know what areas they're working on, what's important to them, what motivates them. Do they have clarity around expectations? Do they know what I'm looking for? And really hone in on that so you can get the most out of people. And the last thing I'll share on that, because we could go as deep or as wide as you want, I also am a firm believer for those of us who have been given the responsibility of leading people, whatever team you inherit or organization you inherit, it is so important you hand it over better than when you took over it in the first place. You have to make sure that you plan to make things better for that organization. So when the next leader steps in to take over, then they can take it to the next level. So that's my belief.
I like how you built it on the word of influence. And in order to truly influence, you have to understand, and there's so many dynamics you have to understand before you get to that in order to lead effectively, which is a great point. You did mention before about how we thought about leadership, kind of the old managerial type of leadership, and maybe how we think about leadership now. But as you think about that, and now we'll go into that a little bit more. What do you think we were getting wrong, and maybe are currently getting wrong about leadership, and how do we need to start reshifting our mindset with that?
Yeah, so I would say one of the things that I recall, and keep in mind, there's no one size fit all in every environment, but I have experienced the old school leadership where it was about, here are the goals, here are the expectations, this is what I need you to go do, now go do it. And it was it felt much like a dictatorship. They really didn't care what you thought. You just needed to accomplish the goals and deliver on the things that they asked you for. And then at the end of the year, they would decide whether you did well or not, and then they decide how much you deserved in terms of a performance appraisal. That is more of the old school leadership. It's more, let me talk at you. I don't really get to know my people because you're just a cog in the wheel. You're just that person that I'm expecting to get the job done. All right. I would say that's more old school. We are starting to see that evolve, right? I hope that there's very few environments out there like that, but I'm sure there's probably still a few leaders out there like that. I also think the new school leadership is someone who really understands that it's important to have clarity around expectations. But yet it's also important to provide vision. Where are we going? I think as the new school leadership or more modern leadership is taking shape, we're learning the importance of culture and creating these healthy cultures where people feel like they can do their best work. But do you know what I am finding and I'm learning as I continue on this journey? You also need a strong mission as a company. And you need a mission that is really more visionary, it's more aspirational, but it's something that every employee can see themselves in the mission in terms of how they can support it. It is why I absolutely love the Microsoft mission, to empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more. I think about me, Lani Phillips, running a channel sales organization and the legacy I want to lead and live. I can see it in that vision. I can see how it's a part of that. I think we all, as we think about leading in the future, are going to have to create missions that people can see themselves in and how it fits into the bigger picture so they can see that it's something bigger than themselves, because we are going to hit difficult times. We're living through it right now. And it's that mission that pulls you through the difficult times. I think you're also going to see in a more modern school leader that you're going to see opportunities to allow your voices to be heard. They're going to bring problems and they'll have think tanks or hack fest or whatever they're going to call it. And let's sit down and let's hack on an idea and figure out what's the best way to solve it. I also think as you think about new school leadership and you start to really get to know employees, you're going to really have to make sure you understand what's important to them. And the thing that I have found that has become so important to people is their development. They really want their leaders to be intentional about developing them, opening doors for them, and helping them to see their career progress. So I think that's what we've gotten wrong. I think we've been so focused on our goals, and that is still very important, and I'm super competitive there, but we can't take our eye off the people and understand that we have to look at the full person if we want to get the most out of them. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
I hope I did.
Yeah, no, 100%. And actually, even as you were mentioning and talking about looking at missions, and this hasn't been like a long time ago. Like when I started in the workforce too, we didn't really used to ask like, what's their mission? What do they stand for? Right? Now it's such a basic question. It's like, well, what do they stand for? What does that align with what you believe? Where do you see yourself? So, and actually to your original point about being very excited about the next generation coming into the workforce, they have that as the base, right? So they have that understanding, like, where do I place myself? And there's a lot of value in self-reflecting that, right? To understand even for yourself, where do you want to be? And does that fit? And that actually even probably allows these organizations to raise their level of not just in terms of success, but just in terms of their own impact within communities, because they go beyond those types of metrics. So
yeah, and I think there's a lot to be said around values-based leadership too, and how you use your values in the company to govern decision making, right? Everyone wants to talk about how important integrity is and open communication and growth mindset and all of that stuff. But I think what you're finding with that next generation coming in, a lot of them have done that lonely work, or they were raised in an environment where values were key. So they are using that as a roadmap to say, I need to make sure whatever I do, whatever company I go work for, or whatever profession I take, that it's supporting these values. So I'm just really pleased to see how things continue to shift in the workplace as a result of this new generation.
And then also to your example about these hackathons or those opportunities where they all talk about ideas, I think that really you leave your title at the door, right? When they're all sitting and they're talking about that. And so there's humility then that is associated with, because I've seen these hackathons too. You could have a student all the way to someone that's been practicing for 20, 30 years, and they're each looking at the issue very differently. And so I think that brings in that humility part of just saying, yes, the titles are good in the sense that you've become that decision maker, but you don't need it to solve the issue. So
yes, and that is even becoming more important, Rola, because if you have a market or a product you want to bring to market, you have got to think about the diversity of people. And if you're making all the decisions, or everyone that looks like you is making the decisions, oh my God, you can probably count on the failure of that product you're going to put in the market. It is so important to make sure you get different perspectives, because it does help shape the ultimate solution. And I have just seen the value in it and the power in it. Now, the most important thing to do as a leader is when you allow people to provide input into this solution, you have to listen. And you can't have so much pride that you think it has to be your way. You got to find a way to try it the way they have proposed it to see if it works. Now, sometimes ideas don't work, and I'm really big on being agile and abort quickly and let's start over. That's okay. Fail fast, learn quick, right? I think that's awesome. But I do think as leaders, we have to make sure that they don't feel like all that work was in vain. Do something with it.
And actually that brings us to a great point with our next question. When you're talking about diverse perspectives, diverse disciplines, do you have any advice on communication strategies that you use that you've found that work when you work with diverse professionals across different sectors or backgrounds?
It's so important to, communication is just going to be key. Communication skills should be on that must-have list going into business and preparation for the future. But I would say that I would say I'm more sensitive to it when I am across from another diverse individual, but I would tell you that it's important for you to use the strategies I'm about to share in any situation where you really value the person in front of you. And I think the first thing you must do is show up without distraction. And I think you really must listen. I mean, it will not be rocket science what I share, but I'm amazed at how many times people sit across from you, especially in a virtual world, and they're multitasking and they're not looking at you in the face and they're just not listening. Okay, so I think that's the most important thing. The second thing I think is important is as you're listening, I think it's important for you to be vulnerable. Being vulnerable means to admit when you don't know something, or to admit if you're uncomfortable. And what might happen is they may help you feel a little bit better, or say, oh, wow, they're not the only ones. I'm a little uncomfortable too. And then they can start talking about that. And hopefully the walls will drop. So I do think it's important to be vulnerable and name whatever emotion you're feeling. And if you don't know, don't pretend to know, and ask questions about what they're sharing with you. I think it's important to do the active listening, which is to validate what you've heard, to make sure you have not misunderstood them. Because sometimes what I'll do is I'll say, hold on a minute, I want to make sure I didn't miss that. This is what I heard. Did I miss anything? Right? Or I even do that sometimes when I'm talking to people and I give them feedback, and I'll say, tell me what you heard, to validate that they heard me. And I think it's important to ask people, what does support look like for them? That's a key word, especially right now, because everybody needs something different. What does support look like for you? And then if they tell you what that is and you can do it, follow through, period. And I think, to me, that's the communication strategy I would use in any situation, because it applies to any situation and any person. If they're sharing something with you, listen. Make sure you seek clarity when you need clarity. Own the emotion or lack of understanding so that you have that mutual understanding. Ask how can you support them? And then when they tell you that, can you follow through with it? And I think we'll all be happier, and I think we'll all feel like, you know what, that's getting easier and easier the more I practice it. Does that help?
Yes, 100%. And you said, though, that it seems simple and it's not rocket science, but as you progress in those steps, you'll realize, you start thinking about how many people do I know that do that, and then you realize not a lot of people do that, but you know that it's very important. You know that it is needed. So I think simplifying like that and making it very straightforward, it makes it very easy to remember, that you need to listen, you need to be authentic also when you're listening, and being vulnerable with that, learning when to say, I don't know, a fault. And the question about what do you need as a support, like you said, is so important. We were talking previously about the simple question of how are you? And genuinely like wanting to know the answer is a form of leadership, right? Just like the simple one, because it's a very difficult time now for so many people. And, some people, because they don't ask the question authentically, right? They don't get an authentic answer. They just say, okay, and so simple things that actually are very, very important.
Yeah.
I do also want to talk, I know we can talk about this for hours, but some leadership lessons and advice, because you've simplified very important topics, and I think this will be really helpful for everyone listening, but advice that you can provide for current and future leaders, both men and women at different stages of their career.
Sure, and I know we're tight on time, so I'll try to be quick here. So I think as it relates to an individual, I think there are things, and I think as it relates to the team, you should do a few things. As it relates to the individual, I would say one of my leadership lessons is you've got to carve out executive think time. I would actually think you need to carve it out weekly. And I mean that think time without distractions, so you can think beyond where you are today and where you need to go. So executive think time, I've learned, is super important, and you need to apply focus there. To always be a constant student and learner. I do think as leaders, we can't feel like we've arrived. It needs to be a journey. We need to be open to learning from everyone around us, but we need to continue to invest in our own learning and education. I think that is so important. Also, as a leader, I think it's important that you really develop a strategy for how are you going to manage people in your organization. I call it my people plan. You call it whatever you want. Think about the different aspects of what your people are going to be impacted by throughout the year and figure out, what do I want that experience to be like within my organization? And that's a lot of work that you have to do. You can put teams together to offer recommendations, but you got to decide, where are you from a leadership perspective and where do you want to invest time? So those are few lessons learned from the leadership side. On the team side, I've just learned, as I've shared with you, how to communicate more effectively. I would love to tell you I get it right all the time, but sometimes we just don't get it right. It's learning from those failures. I think it's also important as leaders, when you're dealing with your team, to have the courage to recognize bias and to stop it in its tracks. I wrote something on LinkedIn. I ended last week with this because it kept popping up in a few conversations. I said, favoritism is the silent killer to healthy cultures. I have seen more and more leaders who have their favorites that they give all the assignments to and all the ones that they're investing time in, and everybody else feels like they're in this outside group. So there's an in group and an outside group. They do not realize what they're doing to that outside group. They are creating such a cynical group that is frustrated and angry, and it's really hurting the brand of the organization and their productivity. I've just learned the importance of try to avoid that, having any unconscious bias, and make everyone feel like they are seen, valued, and heard. I would also say the importance of making sure that I'm sensitive to emotional intelligence, and just make sure that as I'm practicing empathy and I'm understanding what emotions my employees are feeling, it's not necessarily about having walked in their shoes, but to understand their emotions and understand what support looks like. If you don't deal with those issues, it manifests in non-productive behaviors. And I just don't want to have to deal with that. And I think as a leader, I've also had to learn how to manage my own triggers. I've got triggers. We all got trauma. We all come to work with our stuff. But the one thing I don't do well around are people who are extremely negative about everything. If you're negative about a lot of things, I have a trigger that this other part of me comes out that I'm not so proud of. I have to try to keep that person intact, because I may show up in a not so positive way. But it is something that as leaders, we all have those things that don't bring out the best in us. We have to be mindful of that as well. So I could keep going, but those are just a few things that I've learned and still learning.
Those have been great. So I do encourage, so we have one final question on my part before we open it up. So if you do have any questions, I encourage you to add them in the Q&A box. So that after we ask this question, we will get to the audience questions. So the final question that we have, that we also ask all of our guest leaders, because we would like to take a moment or take this opportunity to truly support one another and recognize the positive influence we have on one another. Can you name a woman who has inspired you, and why did you choose this person?
Well, I'm going to end the way I started. It's my mom. The way she lived her life, and I want to be more like that. I have women around me, you, Rola, that inspire me. I've got Ashley, I've got Tiana, I've got all my leaders. I got all these people in my life that just inspire me, and I get giddy when y'all are teaching me, right? And I'm learning from you, and I get to spend time. I've also got the big figures, that we all have out there, the celebrities that we look at their life and think, oh my God, what would it be like to be in their circle of influence? But when it all matters, when I think about at the end of the day, I want to be more like my mom. I want to make a difference in this world. And she did it in a short period of time. And I want to be able to do it with the time that I'm given here. So that's how I would answer that.
Can I also note that I love how when you said celebrities, their circle of influence, which truly then decided it's not about being them, it's about being in those environments that you can influence. And I think that ties a lot to what you've said as well. Yeah. So now we can get the audience questions. So again, if you have any questions, please submit them. So we do have a question around the current pandemic and leading during a pandemic. It has been a difficult time for many people. So how do you begin? How has your leadership style or adapted to the times, or what have you found that you've had to do more of during the pandemic?
Yeah, so wow, this pandemic has changed us all. For me, I'm going through it just like everyone else. So I've allowed myself to just be human, first and foremost. How it's changed me as a leader, though, it goes back to you got to meet people where they are at and understand where they are at. So now, in addition, since we're doing everything remote and over video, I'm trying to make sure no matter what, whether I'm dressed or not, whether I have makeup on or not, I know most days I might be looking a hot mess, but I'll still turn on that camera because it's less about what I look like. It's more about allowing them to see me and allowing me to be able to see them and connect with them eyeball to eyeball at a minimum. Then I've learned that it's important to check in. How are you doing? How are you really doing? Check in on the family. What are some of the challenges you have? Create that space to just have that check in and let them kind of guide you. One of the things that I have done is based on the energy from that conversation, how you're doing, I've let it shape the agenda going forward. And that's a statement for a one-on-one, small group, and large group. Because even in a large group, if you're doing a Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting, you can ask the question, why don't you pick 2 words that describes how you're feeling today and have them type it out. And when they type it out, if you see the energy is down, you can stop the conversation and create space to see what's going on. I think it's important to bring together a small team of people, the team, that can tell you what types of things can we do to continue to lift people's spirits up during these difficult times. What resources do they need access to? And as our company, Microsoft, has done a beautiful job of being adaptive around our benefits to make sure that we're offering time off, mental wellness. We're trying to do everything we can, parental leave, to make sure people have all the resources they need during this difficult time. And it's my job as a leader to be sensitive to that and make sure that our people are getting what they need. So I think it's constantly evolving. I also am learning to be more flexible on deadlines. I'm also am learning that different people need different work hours. Because they have to do the homeschooling thing. My husband and I are dealing with that. So you just have to make sure you meet people where they're at and just kind of figure out how you can flex as a leader to still get the business goals attended to. Did that answer it?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's definitely brought to light more so the person, as not just the employee, the person now has become front and center. So your tribe is asking, Lani,
Okay.
do you have the name for the podcast yet? I'm telling you, we've already started holding you accountable.
Yes, please do hold me accountable. Trust me, I've been so busy on the day job. I squeeze it in whenever I can. It's called Be the Difference Podcast. Yes, Be the Difference. That is it. And I'm focusing more on how everyone can be the difference. Yeah.
I really like it.
Thanks for asking.
So we only have a few more minutes.
Okay.
And I do want to make sure that we get, actually, we just got another question.
Sure.
What would you like to see permanently change in work culture after the pandemic? That's actually great.
Ooh, I want people to be able to work from wherever they need to work. I want to see a hybrid work environment implemented. We had a culture where you had your corporate office, and to get certain jobs, you had to live in that city. But that meant uprooting all the things that you know and love, and you still want those opportunities, and you're willing to travel, but you just don't want to move there. Or you may want to live somewhere else that just is more relaxing for you and your family, and you know you're going to work hard, but you want to play hard, and you don't want to have to uproot. I would just say, give us flexibility. Let us be able to work from wherever we need to work as long as we have the technology to support us, and take the money that we've applied for some real estate, because we don't need as much real estate anymore, and put it into T&E budgets so we can travel when we need to, and we can still do those in-person events. That's what I want to see happen after the pandemic. And I want to see more leave of absence. And we can call it more vacation time, but give us more flexibility to have time off so that when we are off, we can enjoy ourselves. And then when we work, we can work hard. That's what I want.
Yeah. We just actually got, flexibility is wonderful. And I think the ability, and recognizing that not all work you'll be able to do that, but yes. I think having that when it can, I think the pandemic has taught us there are certain jobs that you can do work from home. We do have a question around pursuing more education. You talked about lifelong learning. So there was a question right now about, what are your thoughts on doing an MBA to move into leadership roles? Is it necessary for a woman to aspire? So is it necessary for a woman who aspire to be at your level, or is it a bad time now with the pandemic?
It's never a bad time to get your education. So I did my MBA while I was at Microsoft, and I will tell you it was very hard to do. I was in second line leadership, had a very large organization. I was trying to do it at night. Here's what I would say. It's not required. It's very expensive depending on what school you want to go to. I would evaluate, if I want to go get my MBA, why is it important to me? You need a reason other than the job, because today you can get the job without the MBA. For me, my reason why I went back to get my MBA is I wanted the tools to be able to solve more difficult problems. And I did a global leadership pivot. So it allowed me to solve more global problems and have more cultural intelligence. And I wanted to be able to lead on a whole different level that could be applied where I am today and could be applied in other jobs. That is the only way I was able to justify that financially for myself, to say why I would go back to school, because it's a lot of hard work. But I would encourage it. I have gotten nothing but benefit from my MBA.
So we do have one last friendly comment just saying, thanks for sharing your leadership pearls. I loved your communication tips and look forward to learning more on your podcast. So now everybody is looking forward to that.
I love it. I love it. I'm inspired.
I told you you created
I'm inspired.
Track.
Yay!
So this has been so great. Any other final thoughts or items before we come to a close, Lani?
You know, I really, other than I just want to say to everyone, I think the biggest thing that I want to stress to everyone is you matter. Your voice matters. I want people to practice using them. I want people to really stand in their truth and who they are and have a level of confidence in doing that. I think you're going to find today that more people want to get to know the authentic you and not your representative. And so I try to practice that every day. And it doesn't mean that we don't have to armor up at times, but I just really think it's so important. And this is the time that we show up as our authentic selves and allow people to get to know us. And I think we'll be amazed at what we will be able to accomplish. And I think the last thing I would say is thank you. You are one incredible woman. I have so enjoyed having you in my life, and I look forward to learning from you more. And I look forward to pouring into you more, because I get just as much from you as I try to give back.
Thank you so much. That means a lot. I'm actually speechless. So thank you very much for that. So on behalf of Salus Vitae Group and myself, I would like to thank you, Lani, again for joining us today and for sharing your experiences. This has been so much fun. I know everyone has gained so much from this. I've loved how you have simplified very complex things. And I know that we're able to now think about the challenges and what we can do to address them in a much more concrete way. So I thank you for that. And thank you to everyone who has attended. We do have 2 more guest leaders next week, and that'll be the end for 2020. So be sure to sign up for those. If you're interested in attending, you can register at salusvitaegroup.com. And if you would let us know what you took away from this session as well, we encourage you to tag us at Salus Vitae Group if you do post. Now, thanks again for attending, and we hope to see you at the next event. Thank you.
Bye, thank you.